Hey guys, Tas101 Saga, thanks for coming back for part 2. I'm going to go over from butt to muzzle on the rifle, and then I'm going to explain a bit about the accessories. This butt plate is what's known as the early war butt plate. The later war style butt plate, you will have an extended portion which will come around the wood here. What that was designed to do was to hold the wood together. This rifle has a walnut stock, which not many were actually produced with, only the pre-war ones were. Once the war got going, I think it was about 41-42, they introduced the laminated stock, which was slightly heavier, and of course it was made in a laminated fashion and not kind of machined out of one block of wood, so to speak. And that's where they had to, because of the layered sort of nature of a laminated stock, they had to come up with a portion which sort of held the wood together to stop it from splitting if it was whacked against something, or someone, in which the case would have been in times of war. It's just a simple butt plate, there's no compartment to store tools or anything. What you're looking at now is the stock disc. The purpose of the stock disc is basically it's to aid you in disassembling the bolt. Once you've removed the cocking piece housing and the firing pin out of the main bolt body, you basically stick the firing pin in this hole and push down to remove the cocking piece housing and the cocking piece itself. The reason for that being is if you pushed it on a hard surface, you risk sort of bending the firing pin. This hole goes all the way through the stock, it's completely hollow, and there's also the exact same stock disc on both sides. So you can stick it in and then the firing pin's not pushing against anything to stop it bending. This is the rear sling mount, it's on both sides. The sling is actually mounted on the left side of the rifle, not underneath like most rifles like the Lee Enfield or the Mauser Nagant. The reason being it's sort of slightly easier to carry that way. It's slightly more comfortable as well, mainly because the left side of the rifle does not have anything like protruding out on it, so there's nothing that will dig into your back and it's just sort of easier like that. Moving up to the receiver, this is where we of course find the bolt. Now, this rifle is a bolt action rifle, meaning that it is fed by either single rounds or clips such as this. This rifle is chambered for the 7.92 by 57mm cartridge. I'll talk more about the rounds next. As for the bolt itself, this rifle is what's known as a cock-on open. This is the cocking piece, and it will protrude out backwards when you lift the bolt. Like that. The rifle is now cocked, and that's the bolt retracted. You then grab your stripper clip and place it in this guide on the top and push down on the rounds. I won't do it because it's a pain in the arse to get them out. The Kar98 also has a very unique feature in which at the time it was considered unique. When you push the bolt forward on an empty follower, you can't push it forward. This is to let the rifleman know that he is out of ammunition. When you have the rifle shouldered and you're sort of operating the bolt from the shoulder, and in combat where you're sort of thinking about everything but how much ammo you've got, that'll just let you know when you're out of ammo. Versus you could have a situation with, say, a Mauser Nagant or a Lee Enfield where you close the bolt at very close quarters thinking you've got a round left, go to fire it at someone who's bayonet rushing you, you just get a click and then you get bayoneted because you couldn't fire your rifle. So that rifle will stop that happening. I mean, it may not save you in that situation, but at least it'll let you know that you're out of ammunition. The way you have to shut it when the magazine is empty, you just push down on the follower, you can shut the bolt. The bolts on these are nice and smooth, they're very easy to use. The bolt itself is considered to be one of the best design points of the Mauser, mainly because it is so safe to fire. And here's why. If for any reason a case explodes in the chamber and you have a lot of gas coming backwards, the Mauser has a gas shield up here, so it will deflect it sideways and not back into your eye and potentially really burn the shit out of your eye. So that's one of the safety features on it. Another feature is something called a controlled feed, which you'll see at the front of the bolt. This large piece on the side here, you can see it better if it's forward, is what's known as the claw extractor. Now the extractor itself is this piece, and what that basically does is the rim of the cartridge slides underneath it as you chamber around. You push the bolt forward and it will strip around from the magazine and chamber it. What the controlled feed does is, versus a rifle like a Lee Enfield, which it grabs hold of the cartridge once it's chambered, same with the Mauser Nagant, you actually have to shut the bolt handle down to actually pick up the round. Otherwise, say if you push a round into the chamber and it gets stuck, it only goes halfway, and then you can't pull it back out because it's jammed in there. That is a problem you could have with a Mauser Nagant or a Lee Enfield if you were unlucky enough to have that happen to you. With the Mauser, the extractor, the claw extractor, like I said, it's a controlled feed, so it's holding the rim of the cartridge as soon as it picks it up, or as soon as it gets to about this point. it can't really get jammed, mainly because the neck of the cartridge has only gone into the chamber at about that point, because the chamber's way up in there. Versus if you had it here, then it would start sort of, you know, it would almost be all the way in the chamber. So because of that, if you get a round stuck, instead of just pulling the bolt back, the cartridge will stay where it was on, say, a Mauser or a Enfield. But the good thing about the Mauser is it's got control of it all the way, so you could push a cartridge that far, and you can pull it. To demonstrate what I mean by that, I'll just slide around in here now. Bit hard to do with a D-axe, since they're not meant to do this, of course. But I'll explain to you about that. If you look at this now, say if that round was jammed in there, I couldn't get it out. Say it's stuck, I can't get it in. Now the reason it's blocked anyway is because obviously the chamber's sealed where it's deactivated, but if you pull back now, you can see that it's grabbing hold of the round, like that. Most rifles that aren't a Mauser bolt design will not have that feature, so the round would just be stuck, and you're desperately trying to get the round out whilst you're getting bayonet charged or fired at, and then you pretty much be screwed. With the Mauser, you can just you can just beat on the bolt handle if it's really stuck in there, and eventually you'll pull it out. So those are the features that make the Mauser bolt so excellent in design, mainly because it also has 3 lugs as well, so it's extra safe. You have the control feed and you also have the gas shield, so extra safety, which is always a great thing, of course. The way to load the Mauser when it's unloaded, in combat you would mainly be issued stripper clips. I will also show you the loading without the stripper clips. Lift upon the bolt, that cocks the rifle, retract it to the rear as far as it will go. Now with the Mauser you do have to be careful that the bolt is not sat in the recess for the stripper clip. You just make sure it's all the way back like that, or you won't be able to put it in. The most common method is you basically insert the stripper clip in and you push down. The stripper clip will either fall out, or you can just sort of shove it out, say when you push the bolt forward, like that. That's the main way in which you would load it, but you can also just load it with single rounds, basically the same thing. Retract the bolt, just load the cartridges in, one at a time. The safety catch on the Mauser is located on top of the cocking piece housing, which is this large piece, which is also where the gas shield is. This is what's known as a 3-position wing safety. A lot of the other wing safeties at the time were only one of 2 positions. For example, the 1903 Springfield also has a wing safety, but only has 2 positions. The safety on the Mauser 98K has 3. On the left position, like this, the safety can only be worked when the rifle is cocked. At the moment you can see it's not cocked. The cocking piece itself will, when it's protruded, you'll be able to feel it whether it's cocked at night, so that also works at night. It's a visual and physical indicator. The safety can be left on the left side, that's the fire position. When it's upright, that is the safe position, except it blocks the sight, so when you aim you'll know that the safety's on because you can't see down the iron sights. The bolt can still be operated and the cartridges can be loaded, ejected and whatnot when it's upwards. When it's pointed to the right side, that is what's known as the extreme safe position, as many have come to call it. The rifle cannot be fired and the action cannot be worked. It basically locks the bolt down. On the area in front of the bolt above the chamber, the breech, is where you will find the above factory code and the year of manufacture. Mine being 1937, so it's a pre-war rifle. It's also marked S/42. Now ones that are marked that are slightly more valuable since that was produced at the Obendorf factory. S/42 was the manufacture code for Mauser Obendorf AG in 1937. Before that you also find ones like, I think it's S147K and S42G, other ones like that. Now those codes are some of the slightly rarer codes, and those are the early production rifles. 1937 is only the 3rd year of production. I have seen rifles around that were dated 1934, the very early ones, and 1935. My particular rifle is not a capture rifle, it's completely original German, it's never been overstamped, and it's completely original. No replacement parts or anything. All the bits are 1937 original. These markings you see here are some of the Waffen markings. You can see sort of the eagle with the wings. Here you can also see 2 other Waffen markings. They're just to the right of the rear sight. The code underneath reads WAA63, which is basically translates to Weapon Office Code 63. Now that was the code at the time of the production at Mauser Obendorf in 1937. So those kind of prove that the barrel itself is also original and it also matches the receiver. On the left side of the receiver you will find mod.98, which of course short for Model 98. On the left side you will find the serial number normally, and most of the parts are serial number. The Germans are pretty crazy on serial numbering absolutely everything, and also with Waffenat marks. My particular number is 8676. Now the parts of the bolt that don't match are marked 8626, so they are basically extremely close in serial numbers. On the left side of the receiver here you also find the release tab for the bolt. I'm not sure the actual name of it. Basically the way it works, you just lift up the bolt, pull out this lever, and it removes the bolt from the rifle. They're a little hard to make out, but there are also 3 markings on the stock. The first one is the Waffenat eagle on the swastika here. There's another eagle marking there. That's why also it's believed to be possibly a Weimar mark. I'm not quite sure, but there should be 3 markings on the stock. There are also 2 Waffenat markings with the WA-63 in front of the floor plate on the underside of the rifle. Russian capture rifles, or rifles that were sort of captured and arsenal refurbished by the Russians after World War II, they removed anything that they believed to be unnecessary. One of the things they removed were the capture screws. Now these are the small screws which hold the main screws in on the underside of the floor plate and the trigger group. The trigger group is it fixed to kind of the receiver segment of the rifle, but this whole portion does slide out when you undo these screws. This here is the magazine release tab. You basically push that in and slide it and the magazine will pop off, although mine's really annoying to get off because it's stiff. These screws are still here, which sort of proves that this rifle is completely original. If your Mauser 98K is a Russian capture example, then you will probably have electro-penciled 4-digit serial numbers on top of the bolt here and on all of these pieces as well, on the cocking piece housing. They also removed a lot of the Waffenat marks. Some of them are not removed, but most of them are. The rear sights on the Mauser 98K are quite similar to the Mauser Nagant. They're graduated in meters. The lowest setting is 100 and it goes all the way up to 2,000 meters, which is pretty optimistic for a rifle like this, but it sort of goes back to the theory of, if you've got a line of advancing infantry, with volley fire you could, if you knew the troops are roughly 2,000 meters, you could just put rounds out, not aiming at individuals, or basically sort of, what at that range would be a very thin line of individuals. Not that that was ever really done, but the sights were never really changed to match, the sort of, although, you would never really fire on somebody at that distance. Not like you could ever hit anyone in combat like that. The maximum setting mainly, you're talking roughly about, 500 meters, which would be about there. I mean, that's kind of the maximum effective range with iron sights if you're talking about hitting individual targets. The front sling mount is located on the left side of the rifle, and it's basically attached to the rear barrel band, so to speak. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the video about the 2 different types of butt plates, you will also find 2 different types of forward barrel band, which is this piece. This is the earlier type barrel band, which is what's known as the H band, mainly because of its H-like shape if you look at it from directly from the side. The later one did not have these cutouts on the top and the bottom, it was just straight, and it had some little, I think it's about 3 or 4 rivets on each side. That's the late war band, and that was just faster to make. In 1944, some factories began producing a particular variant of the Mauser 98K, which was known as the Kriegsmodell or war model, which did away with some of the earlier features. For example, they got rid of the stock discs and they had all the later war parts. They got rid of the H-band and whatnot, they had that. Some of them even got rid of the bayonet lug. That did not become standard issue, as some factories only incorporated some of the Kriegsmodell features and other factories never switched to Kriegsmodell production at any point in the war. The Mauser 98K also has a cleaning rod located under the bayonet lug and the barrel. It almost comes out to the muzzle. Basically just unscrew it and it slides out. Although it's not the full length of the barrel, the idea is because these are threaded, you attach 3 together, you take 3 from a rifle and then you'd all take turns at cleaning your own barrels out. Although most people that collect Mausers today don't really use these, but mainly because you sort of need 2 more and you might as well just use a bore snake or whatever. That's a lot, less risky. Of course you can't really damage your barrel using that. With these they can scratch the barrel, but in times of war you just got to make what's easy and what fits in the rifle, I guess. Russian capture rifles the Russians also took the cleaning rod out as they deemed it unnecessary. This is the bayonet lug, and that is what of course the bayonet is attached to, and I'll show you that in a minute. The front sight blade here, the later war rifles, I think, well, starting in 39 or 40, which is when they began to introduce the sight hood, which goes over. This particular rifle is a 37, so it doesn't have the cutout in the side, so you can attach a front sight hood. Because the earlier war rifles didn't have them, so this is just a simple unprotected post. What the front sight hood helped to do was to protect the front sight from obviously getting knocked off angle, and then you'd lose your zero, say if you whacked it hard or you chipped it. And it also protects the point here, because if that point gets worn away, it's not going to be quite as precise. This is a rough view of the sights on the Mauser. Basically you have the front sight, which you can see there. You just line it up inside the notch. This is the bayonet for the Mauser 98K. It's what's usually referred to as the M84/98 bayonet. This particular bayonet has a blade length of 10 inches, and it was a standard issue bayonet, and they made millions of these for the Mauser 98K rifle. It's pretty similar to the one used in the First World War. Just simply grab the bayonet, place it over the cleaning rod, and down. Then you have your bayonet, and you're ready to go and poke stuff with it. To remove the bayonet from the rifle, there's a simple button on here. When you push that in, it basically unlocks it from the bayonet lug, so just squeeze that in and push, then you can slide the bayonet off. There were also some scope options for the Mauser 98K. The rifles that proved to be the most accurate in factory testing were tapped out, drilled out in the receiver to fit a mount for probably usually a ZF42 scope. The Gewehr 43 had a scope called the ZF4, which was slightly different. The 42 has quite a bit higher magnification, it's a larger scope in general. Now, scoped Mausers generally go for a hell of a lot more money, and for obvious reasons, mainly because the scopes are rarer. There was also a scope, the ZF41, which was not really a scope, it's more kind of just an optic to give you a bit of magnification. That was usually mounted further up the front. Those were less common, and they're harder to come by these days, very hard to come by actually. The Mauser made a nice sniping platform, since you could load it with single rounds, because obviously you wouldn't be able to put the stripper clips in, and made a nice accurate rifle at about 800 meters. A lot of people would normally agree that the Russian PU scope, which is a 3.5 powered telescopic sight for the Mauser Nagant 9130, that was the kind of the rifle and the scope used by Vasily Zaitsev and other famous snipers. That scope was slightly easier to adjust in the field and just a little bit less complicated overall. The ZF42 was not really a complex scope, so to speak, but it was like very well engineered, pretty much like everything German, because they always had to, be so clever and kind of hobbled themselves for that particular reason. But it wasn't quite as easy to adjust. It did require a tool. That may be a different scope. I might not be thinking of the ZF42, but the ZF42 was commonly used as the scope for Mauser 98K sniper versions. There were also provisions for some Mauser 98Ks to have rifle grenade launchers on the front. You basically fire a blank round with the grenade attached, and that would send your rifle grenade out. Didn't have like crazily long range or anything, but it was just useful to have it there in case you needed it. There was also a suppressor, which was a similar design to kind of look similar to the grenade launcher. It was called the HUB-23 or HUB-23. I'm not sure exactly what that stands for, although those didn't really catch on as well. The Germans had a lot of crazy scopes, like the Vampire Night Sight, which is a crazy looking thing. That was developed for the Sturmgewehr and all that. Suppressor for the Mauser didn't really catch on. The Mauser was it was kept pretty simple. It was just a basic infantry rifle, and you had the rifle grenade attachment, the suppressor attachments. They were there, but they were not standard issue. So thank you very much for watching, guys. That has been the two-part series on the Mauser 98K. I hope you enjoyed it. So please rate, comment, subscribe. Hope you enjoyed the video.